As the old saying goes, the only two things in life that are certain, death and taxes. But what happens when the tax bill comes and you can't pay what you owe, or worse yet, you miss the notice altogether? A new report from the New England Center for Investigative Reporting finds some cities and towns in Massachusetts are cashing in on homeowners who fall behind, auctioning off tax debts at inflated rates to private investors who then have the power to repossess the property, sometimes over as little as a few $100s from a delinquent water or electricity bill. And while not all cities sell off debts like this, the ones that do, like Worcester, Pittsfield, and Lowell, can take in thousands and sometimes millions of dollars from these auctions. I'm joined now by the man behind the story, NECIR reporter Chris Burrell. Good to see you, Chris.
Hi, Jim.
Along with Paul Meaney. Paul's a financial planner who almost lost 4 houses he owns in Worcester after his tax debt was sold. Paul, thanks for being here. You know, this story is so incredible to me. I want to make sure I got it right. You're behind in your taxes for whatever reason. The city gets a lien. So far, that's typical. A lot of us have lived through that. The government, which represents you, sells your lien to make a profit, putting you at far greater risk of having your property foreclosed upon. Is that an accurate retelling of what happened here?
It is, yeah.
How widespread is this?
Well, it's happening, and we think the state doesn't track exactly how many cities are doing this. We counted about 3 dozen cities and towns across the state that are doing this. Worcester does it every single year. Some towns might wait till they get, a few hundred of delinquent tax properties that they want to put out to auction. Worcester does it every single year. If you're 18 months behind in your taxes, it's going to go to auction in Worcester.
My understanding is the law that authorized this at the State House was passed in '96. What possible rationale is there for the people who run Worcester, for example, if you'll excuse the expression, screwing people like him? What's the...
Well, back when this law was passed, there was some legitimate argument that this is financially strapped, that cities and towns were just behind the 8 ball, needed the revenue, and saw some commercial properties that were just sitting there dead, dormant, not getting any tax revenue from it. So that was the guy who did this was out in North Adams, the state rep who sponsored this law. Yeah, back in the 90s, and this was the idea. We talked to him last year, and he said, "Geez, maybe this thing's getting out of hand."
Maybe.
Yeah, now that so many homeowners are getting caught up.
So you own 4 houses in Worcester that you rented to Holy Cross students. I got it right so far.
That's right.
So you go to California, which is your first big mistake for a vacation or something.
That's right.
And your mother calls you on the phone.
My wife calls me and says that her mother, who lives in Auburn, the next town from Worcester,
the 2 of the houses
were under the transaction section.
So what tax bill had you not paid?
It wasn't a tax bill.
We
missed one water bill.
How much was that?
$400
So
each.
wait a second. You missed a 400. Had you gotten notice of the bill, or what was the deal?
Not that I had known that we got any notices.
Okay, so you had I'm laughing, but it's not funny, so my apologies. A $400 tax bill, and then Worcester took a lien, I assume, on the properties.
That's right.
And then sold that lien to some private investor.
Correct.
Yes? And then they tried to foreclose on your property.
Well, they sold the house 5 days later to another investor.
They sold the house 5 days
in 5
later.
days.
And then you challenged this thing, right?
That's right.
And what happened?
We went to court. It was a 3-day trial, and we got the houses back.
Yeah, and how much did that cost you to get the houses back?
$40,000.
$40,000 for legal fees and all those sort of things.
Correct.
For a $400 water bill.
$400 on each of 2 houses.
So it's $800, cost you $40,000 to get your houses
So the
back.
city sold each of those titles for $1,100. So they bought the houses for $1,100 each, and then 5 days later sold them to another gentleman for $150,000 each.
Did you ever talk to any Ed Augustus, who's the Worcester city manager, via this NECIR report, says the following: "We don't want to go through this process, but if nobody is communicating with the city and just ignoring the 12 notices they're receiving, what is the city to do? Say everybody else has to pay that share of the bill?" What's your reaction to what the city manager of Worcester said there?
We received 1 certified piece of mail. It was during a time where we had some bad medical news. Everything's fine now. So for several months, a family was kind of distraught. And I missed a piece of certified mail.
But, when I read, I don't know Augustus, but when I read it, let's assume on the merits he's right. $400 becomes, counting legal bills, $40,000, and that's his job and his responsibility? I mean, what do they say when you confront them with that kind of thing?
I did confront them with this.
And?
Not just Paul's story, but other people we talked to. An old woman in town who's very low income and almost lost her home, where she lives with 2 adult children who both have developmental disabilities. And they pretty much say that this is their job, is to get all of this, get 100% of the tax revenue that the city is owed.
And by the way, some people, well, almost here, he got it back for 40 grand, this woman almost, but some have actually lost their house, correct?
We interviewed Michelle Cook, who, a native of Worcester, had inherited this duplex in East Worcester from her family. She got caught in the recession, lost her job, was some thousands of dollars behind her taxes, which quickly grows in this whole process. And she fought in land court by herself, didn't have the money to hire an attorney, and lost. She went back to land court and pleaded with them for more time to get a mortgage, and they said, you're too late, because land court is unforgiving with the timeline.
By the way, for those who've never even heard of land court, which I'm sure is most people, you did an analysis from the 2013-2014 years. 15% of the property owners ultimately end up losing their cases, and municipalities collected $56 million more than was owed, meaning the original bills, which the $56 million leads me to the conclusion that the law as it currently exists, there's no incentive for municipalities other than decency and small d democratic responsibility not to do what they did to him, because it enriches them. Is that?
Well, this is a good point, because in earlier attempts in the state legislature to change this law to get more protections for homeowners like Paul or Pauline DeRosiers or Michelle Cook, the Mass Municipal Association, the Tax Collectors Association, has fought against that legislation.
With what argument? That we need the money?
Yeah, that they want to have this tool.
So the citizenry be damned to I want to understand one more thing, which I also cannot believe is true. Let's assume you have that $400 water bill, and they put out a lien on it, they sell the lien, and you have $300,000 equity in your house.
Yeah.
But you lose in land court. Am I to understand from your report that none of that equity comes back to you?
That's why this is so harsh. It's true. And for instance, if you lost...
Wait, let's stay on this just for a second. $400, let's say $1,000 water bill or electric bill or whatever it is. Yeah. You've paid your mortgage, you've paid all your bills, your house you have $300,000, $500,000, $1 million of equity in your house. If you lose in land court, they get to keep the whole house and all the money that you put into this thing.
That's correct.
What's your reaction? I mean, that could have happened to you.
Right. If it was a tax bill, the city and town takes the tax money and the people get the rest of the money back. But it's egregious, and the cities can say whatever they want. It's unacceptable. Have
you gone to the leaders of your town after this happened and said, this doesn't make me happy and I don't want my fellow citizens to be treated like this?
My attorney at the time, Gary Brackett, who shepherded us through the whole thing, and he was wonderful. He passed last year, God rest his soul. He was involved in the city, and he had done many things to try to
So does that mean you're going to continue the fight?
Well, that's why I'm here.
Want me to go with you?
You guys called me, and that's why I came in. If I could prevent one other person from going through what my wife and I had to go through,
well, but forget Paul and his friend. Is Beacon Hill going to prevent one other person? My understanding is Maura Healey, the Attorney General, supports.
Yes, the Attorney General has supported changes in this, testified some years ago at the state legislatures. There's 2 new bills that just got filed literally last week to go at this problem again, to get better notification for homeowners, possibly to change the whole equity distribution thing. So if this were to happen, that
at least you get your money that you put in.
Not all of it, maybe some of it. So there might be a split, because these investors would argue that they're performing a function. They're pushing this money into the city, and the cities will say we're paying.
The most important thing is there has to be notification. Okay, for $1,100, if I knew what was happening, $1,100 I would have paid it.
Paul, good luck to you. Keep the fight going.
I will.
That's great reporting.
Yep.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
really
Thank you.
important.
Thank you.